Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this narration of the web novel Solo Apocalypse, taken from Royal Road. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 12. Their sentries didn't even notice me until I was already right in front of them. I couldn't be sure if that was because they were relying on some form of detection that my low profile nullified, or that they were just unprepared. "Hey, Rule, there is someone over there," I heard a voice call out. Another figure appeared over the roots. Lookouts. They held a hand over their brow, blinking in the sunset. I paused, looked up, and the relief in my expression was genuine. Survivors. Assigned that, even in the midst of an apocalypse, humanity preserved. "Another one," someone called out. He was waving me over. "Get up here, man. Did you come from the library?" His voice reached me barely. I climbed upwards, days of travel multiplied by my clones, and I was already an expert. A pair of rough hands helped me up towards the end. The stranger was among two others, looking me up and down. You came from the library?" There was hope in their eyes, wariness in their posture. "Yeah, I saw the note. From Jonathan, I think," I recalled, slightly out of breath. "How many are there?" I said warily. "How many survivors?" I wasn't sure why it meant so much to me. Maybe I was holding out hope that there were more than what I saw. Maybe I hoped that no one else had gone through what I had. Above, higher still, one of my clones watched. I watched as they welcomed me with open arms. As one of the sentries broke away and headed towards the main group, I watched me and the stranger, Nicholas, converse. He was recounting a familiar story, except a library instead of a university building. I grimaced as he described the lives lost, the people killed, the number that was left. "I saw a dozen dead before I could even react." Nicholas was a bearded man. Aside from that detail, he looked exactly the part of a librarian, because he had been. He was calmer than I would have imagined talking about it. "Wolves, but worse. There's how we put it, but much worse. We count 22. It should have been more." His wandering gaze focused on me, reluctant but curious. "And you?" I took a deep breath, trying to let go of the emotions that came to my memory. "There's a university building, maybe a day or two from the library. That's where I came from," I replied bleakly. "Same story. No survivors. None that I could save." My hand shook as the image of horror splashed through my mind. A deep sigh, and his hand fell on my shoulder. "Well, that at least confirms what everyone's been thinking. We're not the only ones," he said, giving me a look. "I'm still on watch, but one of the others will come and bring you to the camp." In fact, I saw them moving to us now, from a different set of eyes. The sentry that had left earlier. "How'd you manage this far?" Nicholas asked. "The rest of us, we pulled together all these strange abilities and, well, I assume you know about them if you lived this long," he trailed off. "Base skill," I replied. "Helps me stay out of danger, but mostly just luck, I guess." "And it was the truth. Better lucky than not," Nicholas responded. I saw movement not far from where I stood next to Nicholas, but from a high above, from Second, who watched first below. This was the second time I'd seen one of these wolves, the one Nicholas had just been talking about. A wolf, but much worse. It was fitting, larger, faster, deadlier. It even looked somehow more vicious and feral. And, unlike the last time I'd seen it, this one was clearly hunting. It was moving the same way I'd seen it do in the plaza. Slow, methodical, and locked onto a singular prey. Focused and intent. I traced its gaze and realized it was staring towards us. There was time I'd have to find a way to— "Wolf!" Nicholas called out, suddenly standing. He stared down, finding it stalking amongst the roots. "Intimidating glare!" He glared it down. It actually snarled at him, something like a cross between a roar and a hiss. There was a pressure to his gaze. I was nowhere near the focus of his skill because there was nothing else it could be, and I felt its effect. The creature turned away, glancing back, but retreating. Above, I sat amazed, quiet and thoughtful, while the version of me below bombarded Nicholas with questions. So this was the power of another skill. I realized the other two sentries had alerted as well and were standing around. It made me wonder what they were capable of, what everyone was capable of. They brought me to the camp, and I let first meet the survivors. Meanwhile, my original self was being watched by third and fourth. It was a tight perimeter, and by now I had armed myself with crude goblin weaponry. All of me, that was. There was little in the way of armor, but that was what my clothes were for. As first talked with the survivors, trading stories and experiences, I realized not a single person there was keen on this new world. There were complaints, hopelessness, and general unease, trauma in the form of dead stares. As soon as we are back, I'm going to take a hot shower and forget this all ever happened. A woman spoke, full of bravado. False hope. I'm sure the government will find a way to contact us. Tell us what the hell is happening. Someone else replied. You think any government would hold after this? For all we know, it could just be a couple of buildings. Between us and Ebony, there are only two. A man whose name I'd already forgotten gestured to me. I'm sure there's plenty sound reason for all of this, once we get home. People have died, I said, voice raised. I looked at them, fear in their eyes, crazy in mine. I didn't care. The emotions caught up with me, the pent-up feelings of the last week in this hell. I calmed myself anyway. There are people dead, and you're all acting like we'll be able to just go home and forget. Guilty stares, fearful stares. I realized I wasn't staring at a crowd of people more capable of navigating this apocalypse than I was. I was looking at regular men and women who, older than I, were no less ready than I'd been. It was a painful realization that in this crowd of survivors, not a single one stared at the apocalypse and dared to live. End of chapter. Chapter 13. The apocalypse was real. It didn't help me or anyone else to pretend that it wasn't. That was just a fact in my head. Obvious. The survivors from the library, however, clung to hope. Not for survival, but for a return to normalcy. I didn't know why. I recoiled at that. It's because I've been waiting for this, Third said to me. Fourth responded, three of us sitting around a small fire. For something. For anything. I looked at them, mirrors of myself, covered in different dirt, yet undoubtedly me. If I can make it so none of this happened, Would you? I said to myself. Down in the camp, surrounded by survivors. Hey, you alright? A voice sounded next to me. I turned and found Jonathan, the person who had left the note. I thought that the group of survivors would have some kind of leader. It turned out that that wasn't the case. It was just a herd of people trying to decide what to do. Jonathan, like Nicholas, was just another one among them. Yeah, I said lamely, torn away from the conversation with myself. I looked at the figures huddled around the small fires, wet and miserable. Hot during the day, cold during the night. It's just, I don't think they're going to go back to normal. Jonathan was a younger man, put together enough that I couldn't tell if it was all a farce. It probably was, considering everything that had happened. His presence was still comforting, despite my pessimism. Neither do I, he said simply. But some of these people cling to something, even if it is hopeless. That's how you get hope. I turned to look at him. A couple of us have been experimenting, he began. We're sharing what we learned so far with anyone who bothers to listen. These, weird messages. This summary of ourselves. You've seen it, right? I nodded, interested. Had they learned something I hadn't? Most of the survivors were given skills. A few were given classes. I'm not sure if you've realized it yet, and don't be alarmed, but you're under one of my skills. I froze slightly. What is it? Relax, it's nothing harmful. Veil of safety. It's enough to cover the group, and for the past couple of days it's managed to keep us out of trouble, he said. I'm a protector. I took a breath of relief. That explained what I'd been curious about. The swamp was full of danger. I'd been ranging it for the past week, and I was surprised that they'd never attracted more than a single wolf. The goblins and wolves were the most aggressive, and they'd barely been bothered by them. Nicholas found us talking, striding over to take his seat next to us. I've been putting points in perception. Helps me spot anything dangerous before it be a problem. A couple of people have reported the same thing I felt when I placed those points. Incremental changes, just enough to be noticeable. All of my senses were minutely enhanced. Jonathan picked up. Strength, dexterity. All the rest are the same. It's like a video game, he said, sighing. I hate to put it that way, but it is the truth. Something was bugging me. Why are you telling me this? I'm a stranger. Not to mention that I was younger than both of them. They shouldn't be trusting me so easily. They looked at each other. Nicholas sighed. You're one of the few who see it as we do, he said bleakly. One of the few actually preparing. You wouldn't have made it here otherwise. And I understood, right then, what they meant. Everyone else was waiting to be saved. Nicholas, Jonathan. They were like me, trying to save themselves. At the same moment, I realized they didn't have anything for me here. They gave me context for this whole disaster, sure. By my class, my abilities, and skill, it was just as the description said. Class Solo. The Solo excels at what their name suggests. They are self-sufficient individuals who rely entirely on themselves. Their speciality lies in their capacity to act on their own. Their skills have a wide range of application and are not necessarily confined to any one field, only that whatever path chosen is walked alone. I was better off alone, without others to drag me down. I couldn't even argue the other side. It was clear as day. I was self-sufficient, able to traverse the terrain easily. I had an early warning system. I could take risks where others couldn't. The list went on. Alone, I had every benefit. I was a solo, and I was better off just so. Yet somehow, I couldn't stop staring at these people. The world had been a cruel place even before the apocalypse. I knew, because I was one such victim of that cruelty. Weren't these people the same? Thrust into an uncertain reality, they would sink or swim. Their lives were on the line, and while naive to expect that to be saved, could I really blame them? The original me stood up as first did the same, a mirror to our movements across distance between us. One nestled between roots, the other surrounded by strangers. A perfect reflection. Two choices before me, a path alone and one with others. The answer wasn't hard. I had the freedom to choose both, to choose my own path. I lend help and move independently. The more I thought of it, the more it felt right. They didn't have anything here worth permanently trying myself to, true. But I never had to in the first place, did I? A clone amongst a group of survivors wouldn't be wasted. It was another stream of information, another pick against a mountain of mystery brought upon by this apocalypse. It would help. And, in turn, I would help. On the other side of this coin, I could explore this new reality with open eyes. It was only a hunch, one that grew the past week in the swamp, where colorful flowers and moss grew alongside dangerous predators and unfamiliar creatures. That this world brought as much wonder as danger. That amidst all the shadows I'd seen, there were rays of light between the storm. End of chapter. I would quickly like to thank the Tier 5 members, Marky, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Oakfield, Lord Azrakul, and It's Difficult to Pronounce. Thank you very much.